What if I told you that the expensive, super aromatic winter ground bait you just bought is the very thing scaring fish away from your hole? It sounds crazy, right? We've all been taught that more scent, more particles, and a richer mix mean more fish. But in the dead of winter, that's a lie. Today we're going to expose the one fatal mistake that even veteran ice anglers make, a mistake that kills your bite before it even starts. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why your fishing buddies are catching and you're not. And I'll start with a question for you to think about. Do you honestly believe that a fish in near-freezing water is looking for a giant 7-course meal? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. For decades, the prevailing wisdom in fishing has been pretty simple. Draw them in with a feast. We see it all summer long. Guys are out there with buckets of high-protein, sweet-smelling ground bait, creating massive clouds in the water to whip the fish into a feeding frenzy. And you know what? In warm water, it works. Fish are active, their metabolism is high, and they are competing for food. So naturally, we carry that same exact mindset over to winter. We drill our holes, and we want to give the fish the best possible offering. We buy the special winter formula, which often just means it has a stronger scent. We think that if we give them more, we'll get more. It's a habit, an ingrained belief passed down from one generation to the next. But winter is a fundamentally different game, and the rules we live by in July will get you completely skunked in January. First, let's talk about the summer mindset trap. Picture a warm, sunny day on the lake. You mix up a big bucket of sweet fishmeal-based ground bait. You toss in several large balls and they erupt on the bottom, sending a huge, fragrant cloud billowing through the water column. Bream, carp, and roach come charging in, competing aggressively for every last particle. In this scenario, your goal is to create a dinner table and keep the guests interested. You're providing a substantial meal to hold a large school of active, hungry fish. This is the image of successful ground baiting that is burned into our brains. We see it on TV, we read about it in magazines. It's what we know, and it's the absolute worst thing you can do when the temperature drops and ice covers the water. It's a successful strategy for one season, and a recipe for complete failure in another. This is the core of the problem we need to fix. Now let's shift gears. Imagine that same lake in the middle of winter. It's covered with a thick layer of ice and snow. The water beneath is cold, still, and dark. Life has slowed to a crawl. The fish are not the same aggressive creatures they were in the summer. They are lethargic, conserving every ounce of energy they have. Their world has shrunk down to a small, quiet space where they wait for the spring thaw. Food is not their number one priority. Survival is. They move slowly, they investigate things cautiously, and their feeding windows are incredibly short and subtle. To think we can just drop a summer-style banquet into this silent, delicate environment without causing a major disturbance is a huge mistake. We aren't fishing on the same planet anymore. We need to completely recalibrate our approach to match the pace of life under the ice, not the pace we're used to. The most important piece of this puzzle is something many anglers ignore. Fish metabolism. A fish is a cold-blooded creature. This means its body temperature and its metabolic rate are dictated by the water around it. When the water temperature drops to, say, 38 degrees Fahrenheit, a bream's metabolism slows to a crawl. It's basically in a state of semi-hibernation. It doesn't need to eat much to survive because it's not burning many calories. A few bloodworms or a single small nymph might be all it needs for an entire day. When we ignore this fundamental biological fact, we are setting ourselves up for failure. We are trying to force-feed an animal that simply isn't hungry. This is the scientific reason behind the fatal mistake. It's not an opinion, it's biology. Forcing a rich meal on a fish with a slow metabolism is like trying to make a sleeping person run a marathon. So here it is, the fatal mistake revealed in its simplest form: overnutrition. The number one error that countless anglers make is using a ground bait that is far too rich and filling for winter conditions. That expensive bag of ground bait, packed with fish meal, crushed pellets, hemp, and sweet biscuit, is a nutritional bomb. A lethargic fish that comes to investigate your spot takes 1 or 2 mouthfuls of this rich mix, and it's instantly full. It has received all the calories it needs for the day, or maybe even 2 days. What does it do next? It simply swims away, completely satisfied. It has absolutely no reason to stay and look for your tiny maggot or bloodworm on the hook. You successfully called a fish in, fed it a full meal, and then sent it on its way. You have become a fish charity, not a fish catcher. You've done the exact opposite of what you intended. Let's try to see this from the fish's perspective for a moment. You're a big old bream, slowly finning along the bottom, conserving your energy. The water is freezing. You're not actively hunting for food, but you are opportunistic. Suddenly you detect a scent. You follow it and find a pile of rich, smelly food on the bottom. It's a jackpot. You cautiously move in, take a few bites of this high-energy meal, and your stomach is full. The urge to feed is gone. You are completely sated. Nearby, a little maggot on a hook is wiggling. A few months ago in the summer, you would have inhaled it without a second thought, but now you're not hungry. There is no need, so you just turn and slowly swim away. The angler above has no idea that he just fed the biggest fish in the school and ruined his chance of catching it. He just thinks there are no fish around. That's the tragic irony of this mistake. Beyond nutrition, there's the scent overload problem. This is part 2 of the fatal mistake. In the summer, powerful, sweet attractors like strawberry or pineapple can travel long distances in the warm, moving water and draw fish in. But in the cold, crystal-clear water of winter, these strong artificial scents are completely out of place. The underwater world is a world of subtlety in winter. Everything is muted. When you introduce a powerful chemical smell, it's not an attractant, it's an alarm bell, it's unnatural. It's like someone setting off a car alarm in a quiet library. Wary, lethargic fish will often treat this intense smell as a sign of danger and avoid the area completely. Instead of drawing them in, your expensive, super-scented groundbait is actively repelling them. They are hardwired to be cautious, and anything that seems unusual is a potential threat. While we're at it, let's talk about color. This is another area where the summer mindset fails us. Many commercial groundbaits, especially those with a lot of bread or biscuit, are light brown, yellow, or even reddish. On a bright, sandy bottom in the summer, this might blend in. But think about the typical winter lake bed. It's often covered in dark silt, decaying leaves, and dark mud. When you drop a pile of light-colored groundbait onto this dark background, it stands out like a sore thumb. It's a bright, unnatural patch. For prey fish, anything that stands out from the environment is a potential danger zone because it makes them more visible to predators like pike or zander. They will be very reluctant to feed over this spotlight you've created. A dark ground bait, one that matches the color of the lake bed, gives fish the confidence to feed without feeling exposed and vulnerable. Next up is the cloud misconception. We all love to see a nice, lingering cloud of particles when we introduce our ground bait. In summer, this is a fantastic visual attractor that pulls fish in from different layers of the water. But in the dead calm of a frozen lake, this can backfire spectacularly. Winter water is often incredibly clear and still. A big, dense cloud of fine particles can hang in the water for a very long time. For sensitive fish like roach, this can be a major irritant. The fine dust can get into their gills, making it uncomfortable for them to stay in the area. Instead of attracting them, you're essentially creating a no-go zone. The fish will either avoid the cloud completely or pass through it quickly, never settling down to find your hook bait. A subtle, heavy ground bait that stays on the bottom is far more effective than one that creates a massive, long-lasting storm of particles. So, if the goal isn't to feed the fish, what is the goal? This is the critical mindset shift every winter angler needs to make. The purpose of your winter ground bait is attraction, not feeding. You are not putting out a buffet, you are putting up a sign. A subtle, intriguing sign that says, hey, something interesting might be over here. Your ground bait should create a faint scent trail, and a point of visual interest on the bottom that draws fish in out of curiosity. It should contain almost no food value, so that when a fish arrives it is still hungry and actively looking for a meal. That meal, of course, will be your hook bait. The ground bait is just the advertisement, not the product itself. Once you grasp this concept, your entire approach to mixing and using ground bait in the winter will change forever. You'll stop thinking like a chef and start thinking like a trapper. Let's start building the correct winter mix from the ground up. The foundation of a perfect winter ground bait is not fish meal or breadcrumb, it's dirt. That's right, plain old soil or peat, preferably taken from the bank of the same water system you're fishing. Why? Because it has zero food value, it's completely inert. It's also naturally dark, so it will blend in perfectly with the lake bed, giving the fish confidence. When mixed with a small amount of water, it creates a very subtle, natural-looking cloud that settles quickly without spooking fish. This is your bulk agent. It's the carrier for the actual attractors. Using a base of soil or molehill dirt is the #1 secret of top-level European match anglers, and for good reason. It's cheap, it's natural, and it allows you to control the nutritional content of your mix with absolute precision. Now, what about breadcrumbs? Are they completely forbidden? Not at all, but their role changes dramatically. In a summer mix, breadcrumb might make up 50% or more of the volume. In a proper winter mix, it's a minor additive. You want to use a small amount of very fine, dark, toasted breadcrumb, often called punky in the UK. Its purpose is twofold. First, it acts as a binder to help your ground bait ball hold together on the way to the bottom. Second, it releases a few very small visible particles that can catch a fish's eye from a distance. But the key is to use it sparingly. Think of it as a sprinkle of seasoning, not the main course. A handful in a bucket of soil is more than enough. The goal is to create curiosity, not provide a meal. A fish might eat 1 or 2 of these tiny particles, but it will not be enough to satisfy its hunger. This brings us to the real magic ingredient for winter, live bait. While the soil base and breadcrumb create the subtle visual and scent trail, a tiny amount of live bait is what seals the deal. We're talking about a very small amount of chopped worms, a few pinkies, or the king of winter baits, joker or bloodworm. When you add a pinch of these to your soil-based mix, you are introducing the most natural and irresistible food signal possible. The movement and the amino acids released by these live baits will trigger a feeding response in even the most lethargic fish. This is the prize that they find when they follow your scent trail. They are drawn in by the subtle cloud, and then they find a few tasty morsels. This holds them in the area, actively looking for more. And what will they find? Your hook bait, which is the biggest and best prize of all. So why do so many store-bought winter mixes get it wrong? It's largely a matter of marketing. When you're standing in a tackle shop, you're more likely to buy the bag that smells strong, has a bunch of visible particles, and promises maximum attraction. A bag of what is essentially dark dirt with a few additives is a much harder sell. Many manufacturers create mixes that are still far too rich and active for true winter conditions. They are often just slightly toned-down versions of their summer mixes. A great way to think about it is this: a good commercial winter ground bait should be seen as a concentrate, not a finished product. Imagine seeing an old, experienced angler at the start of a session. He opens an expensive bag of ground bait and then immediately mixes it with a huge pile of plain black dirt. The other guys might laugh, but he knows the secret. This brings us to the art of dilution. This is perhaps the most practical and money-saving tip you will ever learn for winter fishing. Take your favorite commercial ground bait, whatever it may be. Now, instead of mixing it straight out of the bag, you're going to dilute it heavily with your soil or peat base. A good starting ratio for winter is 1 part ground bait to at least 3 or even 4 parts soil. Mix it all together thoroughly while it's dry before adding water. What this does is incredible. It retains the unique scent signature of your commercial mix that you trust, but it massively cuts down the food content. You get all the attraction with none of the negative fish-filling effects. Your ground bait becomes a stealthy, low-nutrition carrier for that scent. And as a bonus, one bag of expensive ground bait will now last you 4 or 5 sessions instead of just one. Now that we have the right mix, let's talk about quantity. This is another area where anglers make a huge error. They think they need to lay a carpet of bait on the bottom to hold fish. In winter, this is a killer. You must remember that you can always add more bait, but you can never take it out. If you put too much down at the start, you've potentially ruined your spot for the rest of the day. The golden rule for starting a winter session is the orange rule. You should only introduce 1 or 2 very small, tightly squeezed balls of ground bait at the very beginning. How small? Think the size of a tangerine or a small orange at most. This tiny offering is enough to create that initial point of interest without overfeeding anything that might be in the area. It's a quiet little whisper, not a loud shout. The delivery method is also critically important. Simply dropping your ground bait balls down the hole is a bad idea. They can break up on the way down, spreading particles all through the water column and scattering the fish. They can also land in the wrong spot due to underwater currents. The professional approach is to use a small pole cup or a small cad pot. This allows you to lower your small ball of ground bait down quietly and release it with absolute precision right over the top of where your rig will be. This creates a tiny, concentrated pile of attraction exactly where you need it. There's no big splash, no commotion, and no widespread cloud. It's a stealthy, accurate delivery that doesn't alert the fish to your presence. Precision and quietness are your best friends when the water is cold and the fish are spooky. After that initial small introduction of bait, the next big question is when to refeed. The wrong answer is every 30 minutes or some other arbitrary schedule. The right answer is to let the fish tell you when it's time. You should only add more bait after you have had some activity. If you catch a fish or even 2 from the spot, that's a sign that the fish are there and feeding. Now is the time to top up, but again, with a tiny amount. We're talking a pinch of bait the size of a marble. Often, just dropping in a few loose bloodworms is enough to keep them interested. The goal is to replace what the fish have eaten and keep the scent trail fresh without adding a pile of food. If the bites stop, don't immediately assume you need more bait. It might be the opposite. You may have fed them enough, and it's time to just wait patiently. Let me paint a quick picture for you, a real-life example I've seen 100 times. 2 anglers set up about 30 feet apart on the ice. Angler 1 opens a fresh, sweet-smelling bag of ground bait. He mixes it up, makes 6 big, heavy balls, and drops them down the hole. A huge cloud erupts. He feels confident. Angler 2 takes out a small bag of dark, earthy-smelling mix. He adds a tiny pinch of joker, makes 1 single ball the size of a golf ball, and quietly lowers it on a pole cup. For the first hour, nothing happens. Then, Angler 2 gets a bite, then another. He starts catching small roach steadily. Angler 1, meanwhile, hasn't had a single indication. His float is motionless. Why? Because Angler 1 fed the entire school of fish in his swim in the first 5 minutes. Angler 2 just gave them a reason to look for his hook bait. That's the difference. So why do we keep making this mistake? It really comes down to angler psychology. As fishermen, we are action-oriented. We want to be doing something. It feels wrong to just sit there and wait. Mixing and throwing in bait feels productive. It feels like we are increasing our chances. We have a deep-seated belief that more effort, more bait, and more stuff in the water will equal more fish. The discipline of winter fishing requires us to fight this instinct. It demands patience. It requires us to trust in a minimalist, subtle approach. It requires us to do less, to be quieter, and to have faith that a tiny, insignificant-looking offering is actually the most powerful tool we have. It's a mental game as much as it is a technical one. The best winter anglers are often the most patient and disciplined ones. If you need any more proof, look no further than the rise of the underwater camera. For the first time, we can see exactly how fish react to our bait. And what have we learned? We've seen countless hours of footage of fish approaching a big, rich pile of conventional ground bait. They'll swim up, take a few mouthfuls, and then become visibly lethargic. They'll just hang there or slowly drift away, showing zero interest in a perfectly presented hook bait just inches away. We can literally watch them get full and lose interest in real time. Conversely, we've seen how they react to a soil-based mix with a few live baits. They come in, peck around, pick up the loose offerings, and then actively search for more. They stay in the area, competing for what little food there is. The underwater camera doesn't lie. It provides the final, undeniable evidence that overfeeding is the single biggest killer of a winter swim. So, let's bring it all home. The fatal mistake, the one thing that separates a frustrating, fishless day from a successful one, is treating winter like it's summer. It's the belief that a rich, highly scented, and plentiful offering is the key. In reality, the exact opposite is true. The voila moment, the real turning point, is the realization that your expensive, top-of-the-line ground bait might be the very thing holding you back. The solution isn't to buy something even more expensive. It's to buy a bag of plain dirt and dilute what you have. It's about shifting your mindset from feeding to attracting. When you start using a dark, inert, soil-based mix with just a tiny hint of live bait, you're not just changing your ground bait, you're changing your entire conversation with the fish. You're speaking their quiet, subtle winter language. And that will change everything. Thank you so much for watching. If this has opened your eyes, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that challenges the old ways. And now for my final question for you. What's the biggest winter fishing myth you've ever heard? Let's bust them together in the comments below.